in the plant. For example, we see quite a big difference between THC and terpene concentration in the top canopy compared to the lower canopy. And we thought if we give more light, we get more sugars being transported to the bottom canopy, increase in uniformity. Well, this doesn't happen. So then it raises the question like, okay, how does interlighting contribute? Or either like white tipping, for example, the white flowers, right?
Right.
If we give too much of red light and a too high light intensity, we see these white flowers being developed. But then we don't know what is actually the mechanism behind it, right? Because we don't care about just seeing it.
We're Jug Dealers, we're the podcast you need in your feed, teaching the game like you never seen. Jerin, Gabe, GRAMBO, true OGs, masters of the globe, set your mind free. From Denver, Colorado, where the data's green, we set the data points for the SOPs. Jug Dealers Podcast, yes indeed.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast, where we discuss all things cannabis and lifestyle related. Of course, brought to you by the good people of 5/8 Distribution and New Millennium Nutrients. You can also find us available at jugdealers.net and jugdealers.shop. We do have the Jug Club that's also now open. We also have the VIP list where you can get some nice coupons and stuff like that. And Josh actually made it even easier to find by putting it right there on the front page tab. Don't forget about our bookings page as well. And of course, we have the samples pages where you can get several different packages, all that good and fun stuff, all the normal stuff. But today we have a very, very special guest and somebody that we are bringing to you all the way over across the ocean from the Netherlands. This is a guy that I've had the pleasure of, getting to know and working with a bit, and we'll be working with, a lot more in the future, which we'll, get into. This is definitely one of the up and coming bright scientific minds in cannabis. Everybody welcome Dr. I can say that now, Max Halberg from Wageningen University and all the way over from basically the Amsterdam area, but essentially the Netherlands. So why don't you, give, where are you actually sitting right now, Max? Where are you at?
Well, thank you guys for having me. Well, currently I'm sitting in the east of the Netherlands, actually, close to Wageningen. So the place where I studied also. It's evening here.
And you, and really, you obviously you're fresh on, you're with DLI. We've got the beautiful DLI background back there. I got the DLI hat on, of course, got to give a little nod to our wonderful friends at DLI. But, here's the deal. The reason that you're on, and we're really going to be getting into a variety of subjects, but you did just, and I want you to go into this a little bit more specifically about what your, studies really were in and whatnot. But you did just get your, you just graduated a PhD in, what is it, medicinal plants, right? From the university. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. I focused on the photobiology, so the effect of light in cannabis spectrum, light intensity, and specifically medical cannabis. So how does it affect the compounds, the plant growth, etc.
And your whole dissertation that you did was specifically with UV and cannabis and all those reactions in different spectrums, but specifically related to cannabis, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I focused on UV. I focused on the whiteness of the spectra. I focused on the red wavelengths, having single peak, double peak. So all, the whole end of the spectrum, basically, and the interaction with different environmental parameters. So how can we utilize most efficiently?
Excellent. And that's just a little bit of a, kind of a dangle of the carrot moment, because we're really going to delve into that much deeper later. As I mentioned, this is a trilogy. So this is going to be the first part, kind of, getting to know Max a little bit and just where he came from and what he's doing and where he's going. Because, first off, I tend to believe that at least with your specific degree, you're the only person on earth that can really say that right now. And really anybody that has a degree involving cannabis from a reputable university is few and incredibly far between. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I guess so. There are not so many of us. It's quite a new research topic, and not many universities who can actually research cannabis, especially high THC and also high CBD.
Right.
So that's something quite unique in the world, I would say.
Right. I mean, because that's. I mean, not only is it tough to find somewhere to really, do good university work in plants themselves, much less, cannabis specifically, especially over here in the U.S., up until, the level of legalization that we have and, some ability to do university research now, although we never used to have it, or at least not officially. There was some, government stuff that happened like Mississippi State and some different things like that. But in general, we've never had that. Some of that clandestine, stuff that went on that wasn't all official necessarily. It's like, where should we put this? Put it in Mississippi. Nobody will ever know. But let's and we'll talk about a lot of that, fun stuff as we go through this. But really, where I wanted to start was, is this a lifelong curiosity in plants? Is this did you choose plant sciences or did it choose you? What are kind of some of those influences you had to really get you where you're at today? And I guess just kind of step us through, your maybe early childhood a little bit, where you came up in the Netherlands and et cetera.
Very good question, actually. It's I get it asked quite a bit. Why did I enter cannabis? But I think as a young guy, I was always interested in nature in general. So I finished my high school and I went to an applied university, so not to like a theoretical university, right? Hands-on mentality, working in the fields, but doing both ecology, doing farm animals, but also plants. And eventually this course was called Applied Biology at the Haas University of Applied Sciences in the south of the Netherlands. And in the second year, you had to make a choice if you want to go for plants, for ecology, or for kept animals. And I thought plants were actually, I come from the Netherlands where horticulture is the biggest. So going for plants was like the biggest decision, right?
Sure, made sense.
And then I was just growing cannabis for like fun. I was just growing it also as a hobby because it's decriminalized here. We can grow 5 plants outside for the last 40, 50 years. And I really believed in the medicinal aspect. My mom, she always used opiates like dipidolor, morphine, fentanyl at some point for medical treatments, mostly for pain management. And I remember back during my studies, I read an article that said if you used medicinal cannabis in combination with opioids, you had to use less opioids to get the same effect if you use like a higher amount of opioids. So back then I was like, I just focus on cannabis because no one has done so before, and it has like a medicinal purpose too.
Right.
So I just kept focusing on this. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And I mean, first off, what a concept, applied versus theoretical, teaching. Like what a cool concept. Those darn Dutch are always doing those, very practical things that if you look at them, it just makes sense. What the heck? So I guess as far as that, what were some of your, major early influences, and did you have any, early mentors when you did kind of make that decision, which is, obviously totally made sense, right? As a Dutchman, you gotta go to the plants. So, I mean, I guess at that point, all the way up into, really where you're at now, were there any early research projects or anything that kind of continued to shape that path?
No, I think I was quite lucky because the moment I stepped into University of Wageningen for my master's degree, well, the first person who motivated me to do this was my professor at the Applied University. He had like a student of his who was obsessed by jellyfish. So he only focused on jellyfish and got the most amazing job in Australia.
Right.
So I was them. I like cannabis. I just want to focus on cannabis as like a unique kind of aspect. And when I entered the University of Wageningen, there was just one PhD from Thailand who started researching medicinal cannabis recently. And I went to my professor, Leo Marcellus of Wageningen University, and I showed my interest in medicinal cannabis. And I was going to be the first student of this researcher researching medicinal cannabis.
Wow. So
I think I was just there at the right moment, being able to research cannabis and also showing my professor like, hey, I want to continue researching cannabis.
Right. So
even though after the master, go ahead.
No, that's what, I was just going to, so this is really a master's that then worked in, because you did the applied thing first, right? Is let's say a bachelor's for, most of our listeners or whatever, right? But the applied degree to begin with, moving into plants. So that was more of a master's program, and you were able to continue that at the same university. Amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So there was one person, but they were obviously out of country. So nobody was full-time studying cannabis yet. The university was open to it. I mean, I guess, right. I guess help us all wrap our heads around it a little bit, right? Just because I think so many people, and again, I've been, over there a number of times, and we'll actually be seeing you here real soon. But is it decriminalized? Is it accepted? Yeah, but it's also like, most of the Dutchmen I know don't even smoke. You know what I mean? And it's really accepted in certain places, but it's not something you just go around and do. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people are misunderstood on that aspect. And really, quite frankly, all the stuff that they're doing with the coffee shops and whatnot is gray area, to be nice about it, right? Hey everybody, I did not want to interrupt the show. However, We need you to help us by taking your grow to the next level. Go right on over to jugdealers.shop and pick up some Slicium. Don't let bugs or a failed AC or a broken pump take your grow down. Get Slicium at jugdealers.shop. It is readily water soluble and uptaken immediately to thicken cell walls and reduce any and all abiotic and biotic stresses. Keep in mind, this is how we support the show. We are never sponsored. We are funded by you taking your grow to the next level. So to support us and your grow, head on over to jugdealers.shop and get yourself something real nice. Now back to the show. Gray area to be nice about it, right?
Definitely true. No, definitely true. I think research first in the Netherlands was only focusing on hemp. So my applied university, they were growing hemp in the greenhouse too.
Okay.
And someone broke in to steal the hemp plant. So like fiber hemp, right? It wasn't even medicinal cannabis.
Of course.
And Bad University, same thing. They were growing hemp outdoors on the field because we have indoor facilities and outdoor facilities. And the police wasn't aware of this being a Wageningen trial. So they also destroyed the hemp being grown outside.
Oh, man. Oh, whoops.
And you can imagine... Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. And medicinal cannabis, like indoor grown cannabis, was even more difficult, I would say. And that's just mostly because of policy, right? It's an amazing plant, but we also have some conventional, traditional people at Wageningen University who try to do everything to prevent cannabis being researched.
Right.
And I think when I started my PhD in Wageningen, they also gave me the task, which is normally not a task for a PhD, to set up the whole license requirements for researching cannabis. So I had these guys also trying to obstruct me.
Okay, so they're basically like, sure, you can do it because we can't say you can't do it, but to do it, you have to make sure all the licenses are in place that were unprecedented at that time because they were only working with hemp. To actually do high THC varieties, they didn't even have that ability technically to do it at the time. You had to write that license, correct?
Yeah. Well, we were researching cannabis also before, like 2 years before I came.
Okay.
But then the government of the Netherlands wasn't really auditing the licenses for R&D, right? So my colleague back then from Thailand, she didn't have to really do anything with the license. But when I started, they were like, okay, where's the camera system? Where do you lock everything?
Right,
How do you dispose the cannabis?
Sure.
So it was some nice skills to see also how people are kind of against cannabis.
Well, right. And I guess that's really one of the things.
It was a valuable lesson.
Right. And I guess that's what I find most interesting personally is just this, really navigating that stigma, and the cultural attitudes that are in the Netherlands, even though people think, oh, it's the Netherlands, right? It's weed, no big deal. Nay. It's not really like that. There's obviously a certain amount of the population that, is open to it, but especially in the agricultural community, it's pretty conservative, right? I mean, it's not like there's just people, even though you can technically grow those, 5 plants per person, it's not even necessarily like that many people take advantage of it, right?
I think sufficient people actually do. That's how we supply all the coffee shops to the whole backdoor policy, right? So there's enough market for it, but eventually it's all politics. Now the same thing. We have the cannabis experiment running in the Netherlands where we legally produce medicinal cannabis for 10 municipalities in the country. But looking at the new elections coming up, many parties that rank high in the elections are actually quite right-wing, but also anti-cannabis.
Right.
So it's also a big political issue, I would say, which is quite strange. We were always so progressive the last 20, 30 years. People go to Amsterdam and smoke weed. And now we're holding back the reins, basically.
So yeah, I guess it does in some ways make, a lot more sense that you have a lot more of these micro grows, to actually supply the coffee shop situation and whatnot, rather than the bigger grows that I think used to be going on. But do you mind mentioning a little bit more about, that government program that you mentioned that's been going on? I don't think a lot of people know that they have finally said, hey, let's set up, it's a certain amount of grows for a certain amount of years, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's called the gesloten coffee shop keten, which means closed coffee shop chain. So they basically try to close the whole chain and make it transparent, all the way from production to delivering to the coffee shops to consumption by the consumers. And there have been 10 growers within the Netherlands who got a license to produce legally and transparently. So indoors, greenhouse, organically, all options, and delivered to 10 municipalities within the Netherlands. And it's a 4-year experiment. So it has already been extended for quite some times.
Okay.
Yeah. But they really try to compare the quality of the indoor legally grown cannabis compared to the cannabis supplied by the black market.
Sure.
and then compare both quality, prices, and the consumer experience. And it's been going very well. The growers have been producing amazing cannabis, and it's been for a very competitive price, or even cheaper than the black market cannabis. But like I said, politics, they can even change the law again and put the experiment to closure if they would like to.
It's crazy to me that they even cared enough to be like, user experience? What? That would never happen here. You know, it's like, what's price? How much money am I making? You know what I mean? Like what? Like they would never go, well, let's really look at it and look at quality and then general experience. I mean, I mean, personally, I'm like, wow, that's really how it should be done, but it would never be done like that here, unfortunately. And so 10 growers, and it's really what we know as seed to sale, right? Same shit. Same, but different, right? So, and that's obviously been an attempt, in the US, knowing where it's coming from, testing, all these different things. A lot of places are even going to put GMP certification type things together, all that kind of stuff. But I do find one of the bigger stigmas that's happening now too is with cannabis and medicine, specifically when it comes to smoking, right? Now, in general, I would say the Netherlands has a much different view on smoking than the US does. Like you'll see when you come over here, it's like, ain't like the Netherlands. There's not, not near as many people smoke cigarettes here anymore. You definitely have a lot of cannabis smokers, but when it comes to cigarettes, it's like, so for medicine and smoking, it's like, and even to try and tell a kid like this is medicine, it's a little, it's tough to ever think that even the industry, the pharmaceutical industry, quite frankly, will ever be able to get behind or would ever get behind smoking and medicine. I mean, I guess, is that, as stupid as it sounds, when it comes to medicine in the Netherlands, do they consider smoking to be a viable intake method or no?
Actually, they still do, yeah.
See?
So we have the experiment going on right now. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? But the experiment is quite recent.
Okay.
Medicinal cannabis has been produced over 25 years by one company in the Netherlands called Ruck.
Right.
They produce cannabis in the old school way on the HPS, but very consistently. So they always give the same irrigation, the same light. They have consistency throughout the years. And they have been delivering cannabis to the pharmacies, right?
Right.
And this is for pain medication, for people who get treated with chemotherapy for cancer. And they have quite many cultivars with different ratios of THC to CBD for specific illnesses. And this is still being smoked. Now we also deliver orals to the pharmacy.
Sure.
And we also have some EMA, European Medicine Agency approved pharmaceuticals.
Right.
But smoking is still a viable option for sure.
Mean, and again, you can say you can't pass that one off over here, and it's interesting. But again, I mean, but at the same time, I would say that, when it comes to, humans' relationship with cannabis of many thousands of years, in large part of that is smoking, so we do like to, use this term anecdata, which my friend behind the mirror right there, or behind the glass. He's actually not behind glass. I just like to say that.
Hey guys, we do a weekly giveaway for anybody who buys anything at jugdealers.shop. So buy anything to be entered. This week's winner is Jeremy S. from Jacksonville, Florida. You've won 250 mils of Slicium because we know you love that stuff. To win, just go to jugdealers.shop, buy something, you're entered to win. Congrats to Jeremy S. from Florida. Now, back to the show.
Right there. He's actually, or behind the glass. He's actually not behind glass. I just like to say that. My producer came up with that term. And it's, it's anecdotal data, right? Which in conjunction with real data is data. So that's even doing exactly like they're talking about in that experiment. It's not just how much can it be produced for and what are the THC levels, for example, but also what's the actual experience like, right? And that's kind of the meaning of the minds and really one of the things that we love around here and talk a lot about right around here is, how so many things in plant is that mix of science and art. You know what I mean? And nature's that mix of science and art. And just quite frankly, how little we've researched, in general, right, about plants. It's funny when you're researching about plants, you learn almost more about what we don't know than what we do know. And then when we even figure out things that we do know, it just opens up this entire Pandora's box of all the things that we now don't know. I don't know if you want to comment a little bit on that, or even kind of some of your, moving into your research, kind of the methodology and trying to bring this rigorous methodology, right, into this space that you created that you had to put effort into creating. And clearly you did it with a smile, because that's one of the only ways you're going to make something like this happen too, right? Like, I don't think you could have made this happen being a dickhead. I don't know why I feel like that, but it's like, you had to kind of like, just like meander through this process, that was unknown. Right. I mean, I think you were the right kind of person to also take that on, right? You know what I mean? You have to take it all on with a grain of salt in a weird way, right?
No, for sure. I think many questions. First of all, the black box, right? If you research something in cannabis, it's just going to open up more questions and more research question to answers. I think this is definitely true. Like, I think the research I have done looking at how can we increase efficiency of cannabis cultivation or uniformity within the plant. For example, we see quite a big difference between THC and terpene concentration in the top canopy compared to the lower canopy. And we thought if we give more light, we get more sugars being transported to the bottom canopy and increasing uniformity. Well, this doesn't happen. Then it raises the question like, okay, how does interlighting contribute? Or either like white tipping, for example, the white flowers, right?
Right.
If we give too much of red light and a too high light intensity, we see these white flowers being developed. But then we don't know what is actually the mechanism behind it, right? Because we don't care about just seeing it. We want to know, like, why is it happening?
Of course.
Is it hormonal? Is it photo bleaching? Is it chlorophyll breaking down? But then the fun thing is also the white flowers actually have higher THC and higher terpene contents.
Mind blowing.
So, like, is it a bad thing? Like, yeah.
Well, and did you stumble on something? I mean, it's like, so many times I think in science or even in innovation, invention, these things were stumbled upon. Like, nobody went and, tried to necessarily make that happen. I remember when we were over there the first time and met, and you were talking about that in some of your, and I'm going, hold on, wait a second. So now this could even be potentially specifically marketed, especially for people that are really into that high tea, like, well, get out of here. You know what I mean? Again, not something you planned on fighting, but, can you comment a little bit, and again, we like to have our roots here in science and art. Just the importance of controls and replication and that reduction of variables being truly the basis of, science and the scientific method.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah. So statistics, right? The thing people are mostly not interested in, but it's like necessary for rigorous experiments. I mean, if we have certain treatments, we want to make sure science is like defining if a treatment effect is there or it's like probability, right? And by setting up the correct amount of replications, we can decide, okay, the effect that we see is because of the treatment or it's because variability between the plants or variability between the cultivation cycles. And setting up a proper research is so evident and necessary to make right conclusions. Because many times people make conclusions and you look at the experimental setup and not all science is good science, right? If you look at many plant studies, for example, something I really struggle with myself, especially cannabis studies, is if there are no photos of the cannabis plant within the report, or there are photos, but then at least there are photos, but the plants look horrible and not representable to commercial applications whatsoever, right?
Right.
Then I can't draw a conclusion that these effects because of light treatments are actually findable in normal commercial plants.
And I mean, do you think there's a bit of confirmation bias that's even there? People putting the research out there and wanting to see certain results, and then potentially even, altering the setup of their experiments, right? And again, these are people, that wouldn't necessarily be completely subjective, right? They would have, it's almost like when any of these big companies does a genetics trial or something with nutrients that they've developed, it's like, well, they're going to find something to make it sound good. You know what I mean? It's interesting, like trying to be like truly in that middle ground, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and again, then also, how do you take all this data that you do get and say, I'm going to use this, what's the real data to use to answer the question that I've presented, right? Because again, that's your scientific method, right? You're trying to have a hypothesis and then prove it or disprove it, right?
Hey guys, today's show is brought to you by jugdealers.shop. You want to grow the best cannabis possible? Head over to jugdealers.shop and get something like our Ruby Fulvic. It's going to give you more efficient uptake on your NPK. You could also try our Winter Frost to increase secondary metabolite uptake and improve your cultivar's flavor and phenotypic expression. Or finally, grab some Cocoa Blocks to save time and money. This is how you can support the show, and it keeps us going. We're never sponsored. We're 100% funded by you taking your garden to the next level. Head over to jugdealers.shop and get something to help your cultivation thrive. Now, back to the show.
That's your scientific method, right? You're trying to have a hypothesis and then prove it or disprove it, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's quite an easy setup. And I think most scientists are very ethical. So they wouldn't manipulate the data, although there have been cases, right?
Right.
But in case when you want to do proper research, it's also relevant for academics and for society. It's first of all, being aware of what kind of research has been done out there, identifying the knowledge gap. So what do we know about cannabis? What do we know about light? What don't we know? And what is worthwhile researching? What questions do we see from the industry? But also for academics that can progress this industry forwards, drive innovation.
Right.
And then it just comes down to setting up the right research questions, delving deep into literature, see what is known on a physiological kind of base, and then designing a proper research experimental setup that can answer your research questions.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I think it's a fun thing to do, actually, and necessary.
And I also think about it too, the relevancy, even going back to look, if there's no pictures there, so you can give me the numbers of what it is, but if it wasn't a vigorous, viable plant, it doesn't make sense, right? And even when we talk about horticultural 101 type stuff here, where it's what's of horticultural significance on the plant? Are we growing corn or are we growing medicinal plants? So what's the medicine? Well, as we know, it's obviously not just THC, and it's not even just all the different cannabinoids, of which there are many. Obviously, the terpenes, flavonoids, and all these other different things that are on there as well. There's a whole ambiance or entourage. There we go. A whole effect that's going on with all these different ratios, and there's no one thing that you can say, it's just THC or it's just CBD or anything else, right? So I think there's a bit of that, same thing going on. And to your point, it's what's the actual relevance here? There could be honest research, but if you haven't shown me a plant that's actually going to live and be a viable plant, then what does it really matter? Right. And what does it matter? And as a researcher, what can you do for producers? Right. Because that's one of the things that we like doing here at the Jug Dealers is we like people to shut that computer, turn the phone off and be able to go into their grow and apply the science. Right. And I think that's where, sometimes science veers off a little bit, right? And doesn't have, it's kind of like the architects and the engineers, working with the guys that are actually putting the building up. Sometimes there's a little bit of a break in communication there where it's no, that's not really, that's not going to do anything for me as a producer, if that makes sense. No,
for sure. I think one wonderful example, is a study that was recently published or recently a year ago. And it was about something that I also proposed in the book I wrote, my PhD thesis is about planting densities, right? So if we can increase the planting densities, we have smaller plants, bigger uniformity between the upper and lower canopy, shorter cultivation cycles. And this study was investigating planting density within cannabis. But then looking at the material method that describes the whole experimental setup, it's comparing only 1 plant per square meter against 2 plants per square meter. And I'm like, fuck, that's a waste, because in commercial application, you don't see this at all, right?
Right.
Give me 10 plants per square meter compared to 30 plants per square meter. For
right. So boom, just very quickly, you looked at the method, you looked at the setup and you go, it's not going to work for us. That's not how it's being done. Now,
No, it's still interesting, but I think by having the correct setup and having the correct input from industry, you can make it more relevant, at least to growers and academics.
Right, coming down to just truly that relevancy, right? And I guess before we fully move on to kind of the research aspect of it, do you see in particular, and I would say this within cannabis research and science, although I don't know, part of this question is how much real cannabis science and research is done out there, but do you see, and you've kind of alluded to this, but any major mistakes being repeated or being done over and over again? Is it this, for example, a focus on THC or a focus on something that really doesn't truly matter for us? Because you do seem to be much more in tuned into what matters for farmers, for producers, for the medicinal side, and even for the recreational side, for that matter.
Yeah. Good question. I think, for me, it's both interest, right? So most of the science goes very deeply fundamental into the physiology, but then also kind of forgets about the application for growers. And I think that's the main thing that's missing. Although if I have to ask my professor, they'll make it to apply it, keep it fundamental. But I believe good science connects industry and science. So mostly look at this application, right? What does it mean for the industry? spectrum. How does it control the morphology of the plant, and how do growers can benefit from controlling the morphology? And then you can speak about more sativa or indica-like morphologies and how you can benefit the architecture of the plant to your cultivation system. So I think these are the main improvements that could be made in science.
Well, right. No, well said. I think that's something that, really at the end of the day, it's that connection, it's that relevancy, like you said, and it's how do we really connect these things and how do we connect the research with the application? Moving on, my friend. I mean, I guess at this point, there are a lot of people that are lucky out there. If you're wanting to research things like this, you have helped pave that way. Now, obviously, people are on different places, especially all our listeners are all over the world and have different laws, et cetera. But do you have any, advice for students entering the field? Is it, more of an attention to that applied science to make sure that it's relevant, in the industry rather than just going in and being, a research monkey, if you will, that kind of, I don't know, any advice?
No, I think definitely both are necessary because the very fundamental research monkeys looking into genetics and looking how cannabis, where it comes from, the origins and how it's related with each other. Super important, less applied. But yeah, if you're being a new student, I would say just follow the passion that you're into, right? I was much into cultivation and the applied side of it. But I also had students that were doing the master together with me. They were, for example, very much into consumer studies or into irrigation or into breeding themselves. And all of them end up in nice places. One ended up in Florida for a nutrition company. Some of them work in the Dutch cultivation experiment. And I think it mostly just comes down to when you follow your passion, you end up somewhere nice.
Right.
And it doesn't mean get a PhD, because if you have to do a PhD and it's not the topic you like, it's going to be a waste of time. Just study, do whatever you want to get into industry as soon as you can. It's, many ways to get nice results. Well,
and I do think that you have an interesting background, that you did take that applied aspect initially, but really to make that relevant, you had to create the space, in the theoretical side as well, and I think that's probably pretty rare in that aspect as well. I know even with, myself having been a long time grower, that meant more later when I actually had something to show for it, right? Once I had my horticulture degree and I had the experience, coupling those things together really, ended up being something was strong and truly is the base of this entire, show today, and being able to do this and really, have an ability to give people this knowledge that's it's been imparted on me over time. You know what I mean? Anyhow, as far as long-term scientific goals, and clearly you're with DLI right now, really a dissertation for most people, even as we talked with, Rob Clark, I mean, his original dissertation was really just that first little, base of really a lifetime of research. It's not a one-time deal, right?
No, true. You keep going with it. Even if you finish at university, you have to almost put a vow down that you're going to be ethical and you're going to be a good ambassador for scientists and researchers from the university, right? And even I think in industry, you can make quicker developments too. It doesn't have to be fundamental. And don't have to write a paper. And you can see directly, okay, growers need these solutions. Can we develop them? How do we apply them? What is the strategy for it? And you just take all the skills you learn from university and apply them directly into your industry. And definitely R&D just keeps going and it runs at a faster pace.
Absolutely. I mean, do you even have a concept of where you think it could be in 10 years? And obviously, even when you bring in, which I hate to mention it, but even AI and shit like that, when you really talk about, physiology and being able to do some of this research, I mean, it's just like that. I mean, we're talking a whole other realm of even thinking, right? I mean, it's hard to even say what in 10 years, right?
No, true, difficult. I think some of the trends we see currently is looking at dynamic lighting, and dynamic in terms of spectrum intensity, adjusting these according throughout the developmental phases.
Sure.
So how can we affect development of cannabis and have the quickest, most optimal cultivation, looking at nutrient use, space use, annual cycles.
Right.
I still have high yields and high cannabinoid and terpenoid concentrations.
Right.
And looking at AI will definitely also be a part of this whole industry development.
It's going to be part of the process,
especially utilizing AI.
Yeah.
What do you say?
I said it's obviously going to be part of the process, right? There's no question, just AI.
Oh, definitely. You have to utilize AI to, for example, use sensors, camera systems, but also measuring temperature or whatever to identify early on stress signals that we see in the plant. So we can already do this, right? We can already shoot a beam of light at the leaf, measure chlorophyll fluorescence, for example, and see how efficient the plant is at like utilizing the light for photosynthesis. All before we see changes in the leaves, right? So this is all like non-invasive measurements.
Right. Some space age shit. And reality is that's, I mean, what a segue, right? The reality is that is going to wrap up, part one. We're going to dive much more specifically. This is kind of a nice little segue next into the science of light and cannabis, specifically. Obviously, big thanks to 5/8 and New Millennium. I did want to give you a little bit of a chance. Do you have anywhere other than, obviously, again, he's newly with Dutch Lighting Innovations, so you can find him at some different shows and whatnot. I know you were just in Portugal, and I'm sure that you're probably on the website and everything now. But do you have an Instagram, or do you have any social media that you would like to put out there? If you do, let us know. If not, people can find you through DLI, whatever.
Well, definitely through DLI, but also I got one Instagram channel called @Hortimetrics, so horticultural metrics. And I just try to share any information on cannabis cultivation, horticultural cultivation within the Netherlands and abroad. Just put some information out there and knowledge for everyone to use.
And so those are going to be...
also reach out to me on that.
Yeah, and those are going to be like nice little blocks that you're putting together on obviously frequently asked question type stuff. We've been in contact, about this as well, but like it's, like mini presentations even, right? That you're going to put together, some of it based on your research, some of it what you see going on out there. I mean, if you want to speak on that even a little bit, look at that. The DLIs and big facilities. Got to love it. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, for sure. We're for the DLI website, so Dutch Lighting Innovations.nl, just DLI.nl. We're going to be publishing almost bi-weekly articles diving into the LED technology, but also plant physiology, especially relevant to LEDs. Just sharing also knowledge to people out there, having presentations recorded, and showing we're a knowledge institution, because there's many things out there that we like to share upon.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, honestly, I think that's an area that is lacking big time. DLI is very lucky, and we're very lucky to have the access to you. And I love seeing the research getting up and getting going. Obviously, it'll be little tidbits you'll keep posting up there on Hortimetrics. So everybody, go give Mex a follow. If you got any questions, let him know. Again, this is number 1 of 3. We got a trilogy. So thank you so much. Big shout out again to 5/8 and New Millennium Nutrients. Thank you so much, Mex, for making some time all the way over from the Netherlands. Until next time, from the Jug Den, peace out, everybody.